true definition of hero. And being a hero took a heroic effort.
Every day we bring to our fans the world of sports. We speak of heroes and heroism, but there are days when sports matter little and heroes matter more. These heroes don't hit walk-off homers or buzzer-beating threes. They simply made a plan for what to do when disaster strikes. You never know when you might need to be the hero, because you never know if today is the day before a natural disaster. Prepare, plan, be a hero. Visit ready.gov.
In Fairfield County, something new comes across my desk every day. Crimes are committed, cases are solved, and a community is made safe by the hardworking employees of the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office.
Welcome to This Week with Sheriff Dave Phelan, a weekly program here on LSN Television. We're also carried by a number of the radio affiliates here in Lancaster. Do appreciate you, the viewers and listeners that join us each and every week. Certainly Fairfield Christian Academy that puts this program together. Our executive producer, Kelly Roberts, behind the scene, lining guests up, getting the questions together, does a terrific job. We've got a great program today and next week because we have Dennis Lowe with us, the recently chosen commander for the Major Crimes Unit.
That's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. I'm really honored and privileged to be the commander of the Major Crimes Unit.
And tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I've been in law enforcement for 31 years, and 27 of those years have been in narcotics.
Wow.
Which is an unusual thing for many people that get assigned to narcotics task forces and units. It's usually in many cases a short-term assignment, and things have just worked out for me where I've been able to maintain that over the last 27 years. So.
Okay, let's go back. What's the biggest change you've seen as far as narcotic trafficking in the last 27 years? And a lot of that you were with BCI.
I was. Yeah. Certainly the shift here recently to heroin and methamphetamine. Those are true drugs that when I started working narcotics back in the 80s, we just didn't see a whole lot of. It was cocaine and crack cocaine. So that's probably been the most important shift that we've seen, and certainly the way in which those drugs are trafficked. In the past, back in the 80s and early 90s, Ohio wasn't necessarily a hub for trafficking groups, and now with the cartels, they use Ohio now as a staging point for a lot of their drug activity. So that's been a seminal shift as well.
And so, we look at these shifts. It seems to me that at least what I've noticed in the last few years is cell phones have really changed a lot of the way these guys operate.
Yeah, technology's played a big part in what these folks are able to accomplish, but it's also assisted law enforcement and what we're able to do in terms of how we conduct our investigations and the type of equipment that we can use to further what we're doing in our attempts to stop those trafficking activities. So, but cell phone communication, it's funny, I remember being a young narcotics officer back in the 80s, and I knew where every payphone was in my jurisdiction, and I carried a lot of change with me so that I could stop and use payphones. And now it's just a matter of a cell call away from someone.
And for our viewers and listeners that may not know, what is BCI?
Okay.
And what are some of the areas of responsibility?
Sure.
The Bureau of Criminal Investigation.
Yeah, BCI is who I've worked for the last 18 years, and
okay.
I came to BCI from the Medina County Sheriff's Department, where I was assigned to their drug task force. And I came to BCI in 1997, was assigned to our narcotics unit, and essentially BCI is the law enforcement division of the Ohio Attorney General's office, and is primarily set up to be an assisting agency. So we have investigators that are proficient in a number of different disciplines, narcotics being one of those. And when local law enforcement needs assistance or they need resources that they might not have access to themselves, they'll contact BCI and we'll send out help, as it were. And working in the narcotics unit, I had a lot of opportunity to work with folks here in southeastern Ohio, which was really beneficial for me personally. I came from Northeast Ohio, and I had an opportunity to go back, but I loved it here so much I decided I wanted to stay, and I felt that the work that I was doing here was important and I could make a difference.
Are there different types of issues that you see throughout the state? Is there different types of drugs that are more prevalent than maybe the northern part of the state, central Ohio, southern?
You know, it's interesting. I think if we poll folks across the state of Ohio and law enforcement, I think unilaterally what we hear is that heroin and methamphetamine are their two biggest challenges in their communities. Although marijuana is a staple, and that's been here since before you and I started in law enforcement.
Right.
It's really heroin and meth now have taken over these communities, and it's a challenge for law enforcement.
Any difference between the big cities and the rural communities?
Only in the number of resources that the larger metropolitan areas have to tackle these issues, and the availability of prevention and treatment programs that are available to them. In some of our more rural areas, particularly here in southeastern Ohio, they're very challenged, I think, in not only law enforcement resources to fight these issues, but in treatment and prevention programs as well.
And the flow of drugs, how do they end up getting to the street? Where does that start? And
you know, and this goes back to that shift we talked about. One of the things that's really important for folks to understand is that much of the drug trafficking activity that takes place here in Ohio is really a result of Mexican drug cartels. Those cartels really have taken over the drug trafficking industry. I know people may remember back from the 80s and 90s, the Colombians were big into cocaine, and you might have heard Caribbean island nations being responsible for marijuana. And now the Mexican national cartels have really taken that all over. So those drugs are brought into the United States via a number of different routes, and they have hub cities across the country. Columbus is now considered one of those hub cities. And those drugs are brought here and then sent out across the eastern seaboard for distribution.
So Columbus now is a source city, and,
it really
and
is.
when we look at Fairfield County, we look at Lancaster, we look at Pickerington, the drugs actually, for the most part, I'm going to surmise, come in from the Columbus area.
They really do. We see folks occasionally from Detroit, Michigan, for example, might come here and sell drugs, but by and large, our drugs come via Columbus.
And during your career, is there one particular case that really comes to mind where you're able to share that's maybe already had a disposition in case it was really pretty big or complicated or interesting?
I mean, I've worked a number of very large and interesting cases. I've had cases involving Mexican national cartels, marijuana grows, for example. Recently, over the last 12 years, my assignment at BCI has been in our clandestine laboratory and cannabis suppression unit. So my primary responsibilities there were responding to meth labs and assisting local law enforcement with that, and then our marijuana eradication program, which is a federally funded initiative to rid Ohio of domestically produced marijuana. And what we saw over the last 10 years has been a trend by the cartels where instead of shipping the marijuana across the borders, they're actually setting up large-scale grows here in the state of Ohio, where we'll see them go into a state or national forest property and destroy 4, 5, 6 acres of national forest or state forest property and set up a marijuana grow with 25, 30,000 marijuana plants. So we've seen that. But I'll be honest with you, Sheriff, the cases that have meant the most to me in my career and the ones that have given me the most job satisfaction are ones where I knew I made a difference in somebody's life. And I can remember arresting some folks back in the 90s, one gentleman in particular, who that arrest changed the course of his life. And he ended up going to jail, did his time, but got treatment, went through significant treatment programs, came out of that treatment program, and became a drug counselor himself, and is now affecting and changing other people's lives in a positive way. So, you know, in terms of the number of arrests and people that I've arrested, it's a lot. But to know that you made a difference in somebody's life that way is something that means the most to me.
You know, something came to mind, Commander, when you were mentioning that, and this goes a long way back. Most of our viewers and listeners know before I was the sheriff in Fairfield County, I was with the Columbus Police Department. And the last few years I was there, I was a lieutenant in the Narcotics Bureau. And I don't know if we had met then or not. I know we had met many, many years ago.
Yes,
but
sir.
I can remember, and this is really really something, that on a number of occasions when we would arrest a drug dealer, they would say, "I'm glad it's over."
Yeah.
I have really it's just been, I've been paranoid. I don't know whether another drug dealer is going to kill me, or I don't know whether I'm going to get arrested. And there was almost, in a few occasions, a sense of relief that you know, I'm glad this is over, because this has been a very uncomfortable lifestyle that I've gotten myself into.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've ever heard that or not.
I have many, many times. I see that a lot with folks, and you know, then it's really it's an opportunity for them to maybe change direction in their own lives, and the drugs are just, they have such a huge impact on everything that's going on in these communities and all the other crime that happens in these communities. In fact, much of it can be tied back to the drug activity. So this, for me, this opportunity to command the major crimes unit's an exceptional opportunity again, and I'm very humbled by to have an opportunity to maybe better people's lives here in Fairfield County and Lancaster, and hopefully make that type of impact with some folks.
Now, for our listeners and viewers, what would be some of the signs that they might see in their neighborhood, in their community, that would alert them that there may be drug activity, and then what do they need to do?
Well, certainly with you know, most basic drug crimes like that, what you're going to see is an increase in traffic at a particular location. Now, certainly a lot of folks that are involved in these activities now are pretty mobile, but when this drug trafficking activity is taking place in people's homes, you're going to see a lot of activity, a lot of short-term visits.
Okay.
That's the big key for us, is when people pull into a driveway, they go in the house and they're there for 30 seconds or a minute, and then they leave, and there's multiple visitors like that throughout the day. That's generally a pretty good indicator that something's amiss. You know, I think about our own homes. When I get a visitor, sometimes I have to shoo them away. I can't get rid of them fast enough.
Right.
So lots of traffic, short-term traffic like that, strange and odd behaviors. For example, people that might be manufacturing methamphetamine, you may see them smoking outside where they've never done that before, or you may smell suspicious odors. So there are a number of things. You know, for what I tell most people, it's common sense stuff. When things don't seem right, they generally aren't.
Right.
They generally aren't. So in those instances, what we'd like to see happen is for people to contact local law enforcement. And certainly, you know, as the sheriff of Fairfield County, resources are a difficult and sometimes hard to come by commodity, and we can't be everywhere all the time. So we need the citizens' help. You have to participate in the safety of your own community. I really believe that. And you can make a phone call to the Major Crimes Unit. You can make a phone call to the Sheriff's Department, and you can be anonymous. But that little piece of information that the citizen might send our way might be the last thing that we need in a chain of investigative efforts to end that activity. So I encourage folks, if they did have information about a drug crime, to contact the Major Crimes Unit, and they could do that at 740-653-5224 and leave a tip.
And all those tips are followed up on, and hopefully someone's going to get back with. I know they have a large volume of more than I think people would imagine.
It's an amazing volume of calls. In fact, currently we have officers assigned to nothing but the tip line, that it's their responsibility to come in every morning, take those tips. Those tips are entered into an intelligence database, and then we have officers that follow up on each of those tips. If folks are willing to leave their name and number, that would be great, because sometimes they may not think of everything that we would ask or need to know. So it's really good to have the ability to contact those folks back and maybe ask some additional questions. But we follow up every tip that comes into our office.
We're almost out of time. Commander Dennis Lowe,
thank you so much.
the commander of the Major Crimes Unit, with us. Going to be back next week. We're going to talk a little bit about the Major Crimes Unit and some things you see in the future for that unit, and we're excited.
Thank you.
Well, the clock on the wall says we're just about out of time. Do appreciate you, the viewers and listeners that join us, and certainly Commander Lowe taking time out of his busy schedule, and our executive producer, Kelly Roberts, and the staff here at Fairfield Christian Academy. If it wasn't for that group, we wouldn't have a program. I'm very appreciative of all of them. Until next week, same time, same place, God bless, and we'll see you right here.